Inkscape is a free alternative to Adobe Illustrator. It's what we call a vector graphics program, meaning that it kind of tells the computer, put a dot here and a line here and all this stuff, so that you can then edit things in the future. You can blow things up really big without losing resolution, some really great stuff. It also makes great use for doing things like labeling the lanes of your SDS-PAGE gel. And so this is just a little video to show you how you can label your gels. Inkscape is free, so you can go to inkscape.org and download it. This is as opposed to Adobe Illustrator. I'm a lot more used to Adobe Illustrator, but it's expensive and Inkscape will do the trick. Once you've downloaded Inkscape, you can go and open it up. You're going to see a window something like this. I'm just going to press new document. I don't know what it's going to default to, but it doesn't really matter for this case. And so I'm going to open up this document. Inkscape, what's really nice is it looks really intimidating, but when you scroll over something, it kind of tells you what you can do. And so right now I'm on this arrow tool, I'm on the select tool, and it tells me that I can get that with an S as well. The other tool we're going to use a lot is this T, this text tool. So you can press T or you can come over here to get the text tool, and this is going to allow us to label our lanes. We can just drag in the figure that we want. So in this case, I'm going to drag in this image. It's going to give me some options. It's going to say, do I want to actually embed this or just link it? For the purposes of this, I'm just going to embed it so that if I move the file, it doesn't get confused and things like this. So now I have my image in here, but you can see that it's too big. So I want to crop it. I can crop it by coming over here and going to this little rectangle tool. When I click this rectangle tool, now on the bottom, it's going to give me the options for how I want to fill it and how I want to stroke it. So right now I'm on the fill and I don't want it to be filled. So I'm going to press this. If I want to do the stroke, well, now I want to shift, click, and I want to have a set the stroke. So if you look down on the bottom, it's saying color black, click to set fill, shift click to set stroke. I'm going to shift click. I'm going to set the stroke. And now I should have a stroked out rectangle. If I wanted, I could have changed a different color, but it doesn't really matter for this because the color is only temporary and I'm actually not going to have the color. Now I can go and I can press S or I can just come over here to the arrow. I'm going to see these arrows show up. When you see these arrows, basically, if I scroll from the side you can go like sideways or up and down and things like this. If I want to keep the ratio, the aspect ratio, it's telling me at the bottom that I can just press Control and drag. But right now, I don't want to do that. But maybe if I wanted to resize my figure, I would. For example, if I'm sticking on this figure, and if I go from the edge, it's going to squish my figure. Even if I go from a corner, it's going to potentially squish my figure. Bad, 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 bad. But what I can do is I can do Control, and now I can drag, and now I'm able to rescale my figure. And so I'm going to now, I want to crop it though. I want to take out the background. So I'm going to make a rectangle that kind of encompasses the size that I want to have. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the rectangle and the figure behind it. So I can just kind of like drag over them each, or I can click one and then shift and click the other. Now I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to set clip. This has now cropped my image, but it's like a temporary crop. So if I really wanted to, I could go and I could undo it. And I could change the clip size and things like this, but I'm not going to go into that here. I do want to go into how we can actually label the lanes though. What we want to do is we want to go to that text tool. So remember, we could go to text tool by basically clicking over here or just typing T. When I type T, I see this little arrow, this little letter come up, and it's going to have a little clicker, and I can put in some text. So let's say I want to put an L for a ladder. And I'm going to go escape to kind of get out of the text mode. You can see that it made it like a weird text. It's got an outline instead of a stroke. It's all messed up. Let's fix that. If I come over here, I can see some various options. I'm going to go to this T. It's going to tell me the text. Here's where I could set the font, and I can set things like this. If I go down here, I can see that, well, right now I have it to fill as none and stroke as black, where what I really want to do is have fill as black and stroke as none. All I have to do this is basically, if I come over to here, and it's right now, it's on fill, if I click back, and then if I go stroke, remember I can do the stroke by doing the shift, click to set stroke. So I want to set the stroke as none. And so I have my fill as black, my stroke is none, and voila, my text looks normal. but it still might be a little small. So I can come over here and I can change the font size. Maybe that's better. So you can play around, you can do a lot of cool stuff. So you can control drag if you want to keep that aspect ratio. Remember, always put control when you're trying to keep the aspect ratio so you don't squish things. Various ways in which you can reformat things. And this tool, one of the reasons why I want to show you this tool is because you could use it for all sorts of really cool stuff, but you could also use it for more simple things. So going back to the more simple things, let's just say we want to label all these lanes. Let's go ahead and add some labels. Remember how you can get to the text window by typing T or just going and clicking this icon. There's also a T up here that you can use to help you format things, and the T over here to the side. When you first do this, you might get some weird font. You can come to this T, you can select the font. Be sure that you press apply and to actually make the changes that you want. To show you, let me just press T. I'm going to come and maybe I want to label this as MW for my molecular weight standard, my ladder. If I am on this, say I don't like this. I want to come over here and I want to change things. I think, yeah, I'm actually on Myriad Pro already, but I kind of like it. So, but maybe instead of bold, I want to go to semi-bold. And maybe instead of 20, I want to go to 22, make it a little bigger. I press apply. Now it sets those things. And if I like that, I can say set as default. And now if I go and I start another text window, maybe I want to label my flow through, I'll get the same thing. So I have my molecular weight standard, I have my flow through, maybe I want to do a couple of washes. You might have realized I mislabeled my lanes, and so I labeled my lysate as my flow through when really I should have labeled my lysate as my lysate and my flow through as my flow through. Basically, the lysate, that's what's in the cells, and that flow through is what kind of just goes through the column without sticking. So we want our protein to stick, and so here's the elutions from when we actually pushed it off after we washed off all this other stuff. So we took the inside of the cells, we put them through the column. Most of our protein stayed on the column, but the other stuff washed off, and then we were able to elute or kind of compete off our protein. So this was the lysate. This is, so you can see how much of our protein is here. We don't want all that protein just going straight through, which would be our flow through. Instead, we want it to stick on the column so that we can then elute it later. So this is mislabel these, and at the end, I will go and fix them and show you how I fix them. But in order to do that, I needed to save the file, the SVG version, which thankfully I did. So I can either just copy and paste this, so Control C, Control V. If you then, when you're clicked on something, if you press T, you can easily edit it and change it out. Or once you set it as default, if you just start a new text, it'll say the same. To save time, I'm not going to type out all of these, but you could go and you could make labels for each of these different lanes. What you will want to do, though, is align them. So remember, you can press S or just come over here to this arrow in order to like get out of that text mode and have it so you're just selecting things. Draw a box or shift click to select everything that you want to align. If you come over here to this align and distribute, or you come up here to this align and distribute, both of these are going to give you some options in which you can make things line up nice. We want to, so here you're kind of like aligning and here you're distributing it. So here we want to align the bottoms of these so that they're all even. And now maybe we want to move these down. And so we have these even. But now we want to kind of make it so that they're more evenly spaced. So the thing we can do is, so remember that you can kind of like control to limit the movement. And so before we're doing control to limit the squishiness, we can also press control to limit how like it can shift so that we're not like zooming all over the place and we're kind of keeping things in line. This was not the best example because these are kind of bigger labels than the lanes, but what you could do is if you want to even out the spacing between things, you can go and you can select them and you can distribute them. You can distribute them either like between their left edges, between their centers, distribute the space in between them. So for the purposes of this, maybe I want to distribute their centers, so I would do something like this, and you can kind of then get them so that they're aligned over the rows, even if they weren't very nicely aligned when you put them in. So you can just over here on the side kind of make a legend. And so I would have MW, and then I would say that that was my molecular weight ladder. And then maybe I have my FT, that's going to be my flow through. And my W1, that's going to be my wash one, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I would do that for everything. Maybe I don't want this to be all bold and stuff though. So remember, you could come over here to the text and maybe I just go and I set this as normal. And then remember, I need to press apply in order to actually apply that. Maybe that's too big. I'll do control and I'll scroll this. You can play around to make things the way that you want. We'll also see how we can kind of play around with when we export it. We don't need to worry about it if it's kind of overflowing the page a little. What we want to do though is we're going to want to put in the size of our ladders. That's one of the best things about using a tool like Inkscape is that you can label those ladder bands. So what do you want to go is remember T for the text or come over here. And so now let's do MW and KDA. Again, this is looking a little big. So maybe I want to come over here and I want to make it 16 and I'm going to apply that. Come over here and I have my molecular weight and I'm just going to put the links. And so how do I know the size of the bands? I'm going to come and this was the Spectre multicolor low range protein ladder. And I come and I see and it tells me the size of the bands. So I can simply just do T and I'm going to put 40 and I'm going to put 25 and I'm going to put 15 and I'm going to put 10. And having the ladder bands, like the sizes, is super duper important because that's going to help you know if your protein is the size it should be, or if maybe that's a different protein than you think it is. So you can see that I didn't really worry about them being all nicely aligned when I did this because I knew that I can come over here and I can simply align. And so this time I'm going to align to the right using this over here. And now I can just move this over. And I'm going to control click to limit the movement. So I can limit it to not moving side to side, but just up and down. Drag these out so that they're next to the bands. Voila. Maybe I want to actually just this one, the title, I'm going to semi-bold it. And voila, I've got this beautiful, beautiful figure. And of course, I would have all my lanes labeled. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to do it for this demo. I do want to show you, however, how you can export this. What you want to do is select everything. There are different ways you can export things, but the easiest way is to kind of this symbol up here, this export, or over here. I just come to export, and I want to export the selection. And so I'm going to click and say export selected only. It's going to give you some options of how you want to export it. You can, this SVG file, this is going to allow you to have like an editable file that you could open in Inkscape or you can open in Adobe Illustrator, and you would see something like this, where everything was still in this kind of vector graphics format, where you could change the shape of lines, you can do all these things. But we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to kind of export it in a format that's going to be easier to use. I recommend exporting it as both a PDF and an image. The PDF will be great if you want to put it on your poster or like a screen show or something like this, because that's going to allow you to blow it up really big without losing resolution of anything except for the figure, like the image itself. That has a limited resolution that's limited by the figure, by the initial image file. But the text, you should be able to blow it up as big as you want without losing resolution if you have a PDF, which is one of the benefits of a vector graphics program like Inkscape or like Adobe Illustrator. If you blow up a PNG or you blow up a JPEG really big, then you're going to lose resolution. Speaking of resolution, it's nice to have those kind of more normal picture formats for when you just want to do something simple, like maybe upload a picture of it to your lab notebook, or send a text to your friend about your pretty protein purification, which I'm hoping that you're all doing. To do that, you want to come over here to this DPI and change it from 96. I recommend going and doing something like 600. That'll make it a lot nicer. If you just do 96, it's going to look really crappy when you export it because it's going to be really low res. Right now, I have it kind of like on background color. You can see this grid that's telling us it's like this transparency, which we probably don't want for the sake of this. And so you can just come over here and put alpha to 100. That only applies if you're doing like a PNG. With a JPEG, it's not going to have, it doesn't do the transparent background anyway. But now you can see that since I've set this alpha channel to 100, basically that's going to lose the transparency and just have a nice white background. Over here, I can select where I want to export it to. And you can see it's a nice high resolution. And if I wanted to, if I had saved it as a PDF, I could have zoomed in even further without losing any resolution of this text. But this should be plenty high of resolution for the purposes of what I want. And you always want to save your session file as kind of like an SVG file, that openable file. Because when you then realize that you do stupid things like accidentally labeling your lysate as your flow through, you can come in and fix it. So, yep, I am bumbling as always. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to click the ones that I want to move these over. I'll make a copy of this. And I'm going to click T. It's going to let me easily edit it. I'll Command A to select it. And maybe I just want to name it LY for my lysate. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to click them all again, just make sure that I align them. And let's just drag them down again. Maybe want to distribute their centers. Or maybe I just want to distribute their left ends. Nah. Their right ends. Nah. What's the best way to space these out? Maybe just a little space in between like that, even the spacing. Now I can come over here. I need to change this as well. So now we need to just add a lane, L, Y, and that would be my lysate. So I can come over here to export. It's going to export the figure, and now it should be correct. And thankfully, since I had saved the session file, I was easily able to go and fix it. Moral of the story, be sure that you check your work, save often, save multiple ways, and at the end of the day, you should have a nice looking figure that you can go show off. Another shortcut is you can paste in place. So if I come over here and I do Command C, and I want to paste in place, if you go to Edit and you see Paste, you see various options. So this is telling me I can use Command Option V, and that'll help allow me to paste in place, or I can just click there. Now, if I do Control, I can just drag this over without having to realign things later. Oops, I don't know what I just clicked, but now if I press T, now I can change this. Maybe that's my Illusion 3, and voila. Now all I need to do is align the distribution, but I don't have to worry about aligning the bottoms. Ta-da! Now I can just go and I can finish labeling all these lines. To review, drag the photo that you want into Inkscape. You can resize the photo using the arrows on the side. Remember to put Control if you want to lock the dimension ratio so that you're not squishing it. So you can basically just drag from the corners, and now I'm not having to worry about squishing the image sideways or up and down, which is one of my biggest pet peeves, is like squishy figures. If you want to crop the picture, you come over here, you select the rectangle tool. So remember down here, this is controlling your fill and your stroke. So right now I have this black rectangle, which just might not be what I want. But what I can do over here is I come over here and I say I want my fill to be none. But now it still doesn't have a stroke. It has stroke of none. If it tells me over here, if I scroll over, it says shift click to set stroke. So that's what I do. I'm going to do shift click, and now I have a black stroke. I come over here and I move this over to the item I want to crop. I select both items. I right click, set clip, and now I have it clipped. But maybe I didn't want to actually do that, so I'm just going to Control Z and undo that. That's how you could do that. If you want to have text, just press T or come over here to this tool. Let's give me my text, and I can write whatever I want. Because I have that settings for the rectangle, it's going to give me this weird text with like style that I don't really want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I want to go to text, and I'm just going to fill. I want to fill it with black. Stroke, I want to stroke it with nothing. And so I just do shift click again. And now I'm back to the settings that I want. But if maybe I don't like that font or something, I want to change various features of it, I can change things over here and I can press apply, and then it'll apply to that. If I find something I like, I can set it as my default. If I want to align things, I come over here and I press the align, and now I can align things, line them up their edges, distribute them, make the spacing even, all these cool things. And then when I like what I have, I can come over here and I can export it. Remember to export the selected only, or if you don't want it to do like the page, or you can select the page, but then you're gonna have a bunch of empty space. Play around. There's a lot of really cool stuff to do. There's a lot that I didn't show you, and I will provide links to some tutorials and things if there's more that you want to learn. But one of the great things about Inkscape is that you can kind of easily do minimal amount of stuff and get figures that are going to look a lot nicer than if you had kind of just scribbled some pen on your picture from the printout. Presentation worthy, you might say.